But first, the all-important Iowa caucuses, they are in the books. It was a huge night for Donald Trump. Take a look.
I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together, whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems and straighten out all of the death and destruction that we're witnessing. That's practically never been like this. It's just so important, and I want to make that a very big part of our message. We're going to come together. It's going to happen soon, too. It's going to happen soon.
The 45th president won the state with a historic 30-point margin, getting most votes of 98 out of 99 Iowa counties. The previous record of a win was set by Bob Dole in 1988, who won by just shy of 13 points. And as you just heard during his victory speech, Donald Trump struck what was a unifying tone. But apparently, according to part-time make-believe journalists and full-time left-wing hate Trump conspiracy theorists like radical Rachel Maddow, well, Trump's speech was too dangerous for the fragile ears of NBC's loyal viewers. They didn't take any of the speech live. Instead, no, Miss Maddow was lecturing Americans about truth and integrity. This is a joke, right? Serious question. Does Maddow not have any self-awareness at all? No one in the media mob has peddled more lies, more conspiracy theories than Rachel Maddow. Every night for about 5 solid years, and it still goes on to this day, Maddow proudly donned that tinfoil hat and spread some of the most insane, craziest conspiracy theories that we've ever heard. Now, she denied the legitimacy of the 2016 election, an election denier. Anyway, telling her viewers that it was hacked by Vladimir Putin. She also suggested that Russia was in charge of our federal government and that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. Quote, the worst case scenario that the president is a foreign agent suddenly feels very palpable. Night after night, Maddow and others pushing insane fake stories about Alpha Bank, the dirty dossier, and a million other far-fetched Russia-related conspiracy theories. By the way, never apologized, never attempted to correct the record. There are multiple articles dedicated to Maddow's descent into the deep end. Here's one from Politico titled, Rachel Maddow's Deep Delusion. And here's The Guardian, quote, will Rachel Maddow face a reckoning over her Trump-Russia coverage? Well, apparently not, because last night she anchored MSDNC's coverage of the Republican Iowa caucuses. Journalism, that is a joke. This is NBC News. It's a joke. Of course, the same is true over at fake news CNN. For example, here's fake Jake Tapper cutting off Trump's victory speech in order that he could cope and seethe at the same time. Take a look.
We have an invasion of millions and millions of people that are coming into our country. I can't imagine why they think that's a good thing.
Donald Trump declaring victory with a historically strong showing in the Iowa caucuses. If these numbers hold, the biggest victory for a non-incumbent president in the modern era for this contest. A relatively subdued speech as these things go so far, although here he is right now under my voice. You hear him repeating his anti-immigrant rhetoric.
Anti-immigrant. Maybe you can call it pro-legal immigration rhetoric. Just a thought. Instead of playing Trump's full remarks so their viewers can decide themselves, well, fake Jake Tapper decided it was more important to trash Trump's speech in real time. Now, let me inform anybody that may accidentally pop onto fake news CNN. Jake Tapper is not a journalist. He's a political hack. He's a Democratic operative. He's living a lie. He just needs to be honest about who he is. Jake, it's clear you have a deep-seated left-wing bias and supreme hatred for all things Donald Trump. Just tell the truth about who you are. You are a left-wing radical talk show host. You're not a journalist, as you claim, and that's why we very accurately refer to you as fake Jake. Now, of course, self-described journalists like Tapper and Maddow don't just hate Donald Trump. They frankly hate everyone who supports him. Take a look.
Trump has in some ways become religion for a certain section of the American electorate, and especially for evangelicals, that it's not about the virtue anymore, it's about the vice that Trump expresses. And I think you see that playing out in Iowa, where the evangelical vote is key. It is central to what is going to unfold tonight, and it is very much a group of people that find that Trump is in some ways a second coming.
These are white Christians. That this is a state that is overrepresented by white Christians that are going to participate in these caucuses, especially tonight.
Regardless of whether or not they have any link to any church. It's, I am not a Catholic, I am not a Jew, and I am right-wing and willing to get rid of democracy. That's what evangelical means in real political terms
just
right now.
80% of the Republican primary voters agree with this racially charged comment coming from Donald Trump that immigrants coming here are illegally, quote, poisoning the blood of this country. That's so unsettling.
You voted for a guy who said, come, risk your lives for the Grand Wizard. Come in the snow and the sleet, because I am more important than your life. That's who the 5% voted for.
Actually was laughing when he said that. Here's a simple truth, and it's one you already know. The media mob, they hate all of you, by the way, yours truly included. They hate everything about Americans that don't share their radical leftist worldview. They think that they're smarter than everyone else. Well, guess what? They're not. They don't care if Joe Biden's policies are hurting millions of Americans. 60% of Americans now living paycheck to paycheck. Many people have to use a credit card for bare necessities. They don't care about what's happening at our border. You know, people coming from Iran and Afghanistan, Syria, Egypt, Russia, China. They don't seem to care about inflation, homelessness, crime, or the violence that's overseas. But they're deeply concerned that Biden's poor performance and obvious cognitive decline and mental incompetence will lead to a second Trump term. In fact, so-called journalists and Democrats, well, in the country, they're now in a full-fledged panic mode. Former 2020 Biden campaign aide Simone Sanders just ripped Bidenomics and is now begging the campaign to let it go. The focus should be on something else. Meanwhile, former Obama advisor David Axelrod, not a dumb guy, is once again warning the Democratic Party about a formidable Trump campaign. Make no mistake. Anything can happen between now and November. Nobody can predict with certainty how this is going to end. But Joe Biden has never looked worse. Donald Trump, frankly, has never looked better. And this week, a big new endorsement. Let's take a look.
I'll tell you, the people of Iowa spoke loud and clear last night, and I'm a big believer that we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That we, the people, choose who leads this country. And so we heard we, the people, last night, and that is why last evening I met my friend here. We met in person, and I told him that I would endorse Donald J. Trump for president of the United States.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.